Welcome back. We're going to talk about motor skills across the lifespan. Let's start with, just first off, a nice definition of motor skills. So motor development refers to how we gain control of our body and then maybe kind of lose some of it as we age. So motor development, if you recall back to chapter 2 when we talked about motor neurons and sensory neurons, motor always refers to that movement component. So motor development. There is something that we call, norming of developmental milestones, and these motor development milestones are normed. On average, we expect babies to sit unsupported at about 6 months of age. By about 6 months of age, I think it's something like 80% of babies are sitting unsupported. 8 to 9 months, most babies are in the crawling stage. Some might have moved on to the next stage by now or might still be, not quite crawling, but on average, babies are crawling 8 to 9 months. About 9 to 12 months is the cruising stage where babies can pull up on something and move around as long as they're holding on to something. So, holding onto the couch or holding onto your hand or something like that. They can walk, but they can't really walk independently. And then sometime around 12 months and beyond, babies start legitimately walking where they can walk unsupported, motor themselves around in the environment. So this pattern where we expect to see certain milestones at roughly certain ages is, we know the order that things will happen. It's difficult to say for an individual baby exactly when these milestones will occur. So once you have a baby who's sitting unsupported, then a family should be baby-proofing, because the next thing that's going to happen is that baby's going to start somehow locomoting across the floor, either scooting on their stomach or crawling on their hands and knees or bear crawling on their hands and feet, or something's about to happen. And so it's kind of nice that the babies give us a little heads up. I'm about to start moving by being able to sit up by themselves and like that. Sometimes parents get a little bit obsessed with these milestones and the timing of the milestones. There's no way to rush them. You can't say train your baby to crawl sooner. It's really hard to slow them down also. Even in cultures where babies are carried on backpacks or in slings most of the time and hardly ever get any opportunity to crawl on the floor, they usually will still cruise on time. So, these motor milestones are really, individually driven and really resilient to environmental influence. You really can't cut the line and get them to do stuff earlier or harm them too much by not letting them move around enough. Some places, it's not very safe to let your baby crawl around on the floor and stuff. Other places we have clean floors and things, and so babies might get more motor movement. But walking will happen at roughly the same time no matter which of those experiences the baby has. Oh, this is a huge leap. Learning to walk to, oh my gosh, over 80. But really, once babies start on that trajectory of getting more and more motor control, it's sort of going naturally through more and more fine motor skills, gross motor skills, stuff like that. And so I didn't want to bore you guys with all that stuff too much. If you take my lifespan class, I'll bore you with that in that class. What I wanted to do is when's the next big noticeable change? And they say after age 80, you start to see a slowing down of the motor skills so that you start to see complex tasks being affected. And a good example of that in modern day is driving, right? Where you have to, think to take your foot off the gas, put it on the brakes so that you can stop and things like that. And what we find is an inordinate number of times when a person lurches their car into the side of a convenience store or whatever and says, oh, I thought I was pushing on the brake. An inordinate number of times it's a person who's elderly rather than a person who's young. Sometimes it's a distracted younger person, but it seems like it's almost always somebody who's older, and that kind of reveals the motor skill changes that the person's experiencing, where the ability to actually take their foot off of the gas and put it onto the brake is hampered by slowing motor development. So we have this big wide period between probably 8 years old and 80 years old where we have pretty good motor skills on average. Now the thing that we can do all of us should do. It's really super important, and more people are doing these kinds of things, but we should do things to help reduce deterioration so that across our lifespan we have healthier bodies and healthier movements. So things that we can do. This doesn't seem very logical. I'm showing a bunch of elderly people playing cards. You're like, wait, I thought we were talking about motor skills. What are you talking about? Well, what initiates motor movement? Your brain. Keeping your brain flexible is a really important aspect of, healthy development and, preserving your skills of all sorts. So research has shown that older people who have been engaging in challenging tasks like this is actually people playing bridge, which has such complex rules that I haven't even figured out how to play it yet. I keep saying I'm going to, but I don't know how to play. I consider myself lucky I can play gin rummy. So I haven't learned the rules of this game, but I've heard it's quite complex. And that it's not only that the rules are complex, but that it's also a social game where you're playing with your partner who's across the table from you. And it's all, there's a lot going on. They actually used bridge in the research, and they said this kind of challenging task really helps to keep older people mentally sharp. And so as we age, we should be taking on more of these things. If you're a younger person and you like to play video games and you have an older parent or grandparent who never plays it and thinks it's for kids and doesn't really want to, it would be good for them to sit down and play a game with you. They may not be interested in playing Fortnite or something like that, but they might be interested in playing Portals, if you have that. They might be interested in playing Tetris. That's a fun game for an older person. Things that include riddles or things like that, they might enjoy playing those things. We've strapped my mom into a VR headset and had her play Beat Saber, if you're familiar with that game at all, where you have to hit these cubes with your little VR handsets at different angles and stuff. She doesn't feel comfortable standing up with the VR headset, so we had her sit in an office chair while she played it, because you don't have to be standing up. And she had a lot of fun, right? Put it on the easy level, let her try it out, and it's fun. And guess what? For older people, it's a novel behavior. And so it helps to shape their brain and keep their reaction time better. Now, for younger people who have been playing these games their whole lives, you've probably maxed out the benefits that you're going to get from a video game with regard to brain development. I've seen a lot of younger people pick and choose the literature and say to me, oh, no, it's good for me that I play video games. Well, it's not as harmful as I think a lot of people want to say that it is. But any behavior that you've been doing so much that you can do it without having to think about it, you're probably not getting the same benefit that you would if you were learning a new skill. So in your case, if you've been playing a lot of video games, you should then, after letting an older person play with you on your video game, you should play something that they like. Pinochle. My grandparents would always say Pinochle. I don't even know what it is. I think it's a card game, but they'd say, do you want to play Pinochle? And I'd think, well, I've never heard of it, so I'm going to guess no. I don't know what you're talking about. So I never learned to play Pinochle either. I think it's a card game. My grandparents loved card games. And see, they had probably gotten all they could get out of card games because they played them so, voraciously when they were younger and all the way into adulthood that they would have been better off switching to crossword puzzles or something else, right? So the idea is you want to change up whatever you're doing, and the more challenging the task, the better it is for your development. So it actually is good for us to take on new things, being lifelong learners, things like that. And then the other thing about motor development, now, of course, this might seem more obvious, is physical exercise. You will be able to maintain control of your body better if you keep using your body your whole life. And, one of the worst things that we do in our modern lives is sit down too much. I'm currently sitting down, and actually, every time I stand up, it's like, ow, my back hurts. Why did I sit here so long? And, getting up and moving around, your body's designed for it. And what physical exercise does is it, of course, tones our bodies. But it also causes blood flow to our brain. And as you should recall from chapter 2, our brain requires blood flow for nutrition. It's not like the brain has a storehouse of energy in it, like fat, like our body does. It needs blood flow with fresh oxygen, bringing it nutrition all the time. And so physical exercise keeps our cardiovascular health, which keeps our brains healthier. And so, of course, not only will we have better motor development, better motor skills, we'll have better cognitive functioning also. So doing these kinds of things, challenging tasks combined with physical exercise, we can really maintain our health a lot longer into adulthood. All right. That was motor development. Kind of brief. Don't hold your breath though. My next segment is going to be a little long because cognitive development, I can't skip some of the stuff. So cognitive development is next.